So, I have a story here that came from CNN and was written by Zachary B. Wolf. And I know it's going to give a lot of people hope for the future, maybe bring a little bit of happiness to some people. When I first, and it is about the fact that Pat Robertson has finally passed away. Yes, he made it to 92, but ding dong, the Wicked Witch is dead. Seriously, this man was probably the worst of the worst on the far right, far Christian right, and a lot of the things that we're dealing with today in the political spectrum were really started by Pat Robertson. Aaron, I know you had a lot to say about it. You want to follow up?
Yeah, so I wasn't too much. I was raised Mormon, so I didn't really know too much about Pat Robertson. But in my research, this guy, he was super smart. He graduated from a private high school with honors. He earned a bachelor's in history, graduated magna cum laude. He was a member of an academic society, Phi Beta Kappa. He then got a law degree near the top of his class. He got a master of divinity after all this. This guy was really smart, and he got a lot done. He founded CBN University that has a really good online program today that's ranked very highly in the state of Virginia. He founded the American Center for Law and Justice, the 700 Club. This guy was really busy doing a lot of things. Unfortunately, he was doing things that I don't agree with and that I don't appreciate, and that is trying to get Christianity built into our country. He was basically the founding father of Christian nationalism in the United States. He was very successful at it. He was so successful at it that he was able to get his group of voters to turn out in higher percentages than in almost any other group in the country, and they still vote. They still register to vote and vote at higher rates than any other group in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have a lot of say in what goes on in the United States. Cindy, do you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, well, just like you, I didn't know him very much as a European. He's the kind of figures that don't make the news too much over there. Um, since his death, I've seen several memes talking about the impact he had on American politics. Um, and uh, the articles mentions something else, and the article says he helped elect Ronald Reagan, and I'm not sure which is worse, honestly, because I don't know which one of both outcomes had a worse impact on the American society right now. Because on one hand, you have Reagan, who implemented the trickle down politics. He revived racism for his campaign and his political gain. Uh, he he removed a lot of the taxes on the rich, and so the extreme inequality that we see in the U.S. is mostly because of him. And on the other side, you have it's like choosing between Caribbean and Sealites. On the other side, you have a group that's been dead focused on trying to put down everyone they don't like. And so he's also a symptom of something we talked about several times here on the show, how the right built their victory on Roe for 50 years from the ground up. Like you said, Aaron, he motivated people to vote for their agenda, and that's something that other candidates should um, invest in as well. And just for the record, I would like to point out, because a lot of responses were heading that way, uh, there is absolutely nothing wrong in saying good riddance to the death of an absolutely despicable person. Dr. Rich?
Yeah, it's this whole, oh, you must respect them because they died. It's like, yeah, of course, that's how it works, because we all respect Stalin, Pol Pot, and Hitler, don't we? He is He's an interesting figure. I knew of him vaguely because he's on the radar for being one of these weird preachers who occasionally predicts things that don't happen and just gets on TV a lot to become very rich. A phenomena that we in Britain find baffling and fascinating in equal measure. And you're right. He had this way of galvanizing people to vote based on this thing has happened. We don't like it. To change it, you need to get out there and vote and be part of things. And for that, I agree with the guy. He's absolutely right. And the overturning of Roe, maybe that should be a similarly galvanizing thing for a different group of people. Let's hope. And other things that are happening. There's some small matters of legal matters and things going on that might galvanize people to vote a certain way. And in my country, small matter of an ex-prime minister, a current prime minister having a massive row at the moment might be something we can focus on as well. We don't want any more of that. Let's do something different. But yeah, Pat Robinson's a very, very interesting, colourful character, and that kind of those kind of preachers, the ones who make a lot of money and gain a lot of ground and have a lot of power, do tend to be very, very smart. We on the sort of atheist, anti-theist side, we kind of like to laugh at them and laugh at their arguments and laugh at what they do, and pretend like they're not smart, but they are, which always raises the question to me: do they know exactly what they're doing? Is everything planned? Is the religion a vehicle for the money and the power rather than something that is actually central to them, really? How psychopathic was the guy? I don't know. But it's always raised a red card when somebody sort of thinks that their God is short of cash. It's always something that I found kind of odd, and that their God needs more power, because apparently these things can't just happen by God deciding they're going to happen. Humans have got to get it in there and do it. Funny that, isn't it? But he's a very, very curious, the whole thing, and he's a great emblem of that sort of culture of mega churches and wealth and power, and how the Christian right, and to some extent the Christian left, like to try and influence politics in the US in particular. And we've had it here in the UK with this thing called the National Conservatives, who are trying to be a sort of the UK's version of the Tea Party. I think it didn't go well. We just pointed and laughed at them. So a bit more of that, I would suggest as well. But yeah,
that
so
kind of
that's
shows you're a little smarter than us over there.
well. My answer to that would be Brexit, but other than that,
fair enough. Fair enough.
Sometimes I think over here what's happened is the older generation are voting less, and everything from Gen Z to Gen X are voting more, and we aren't happy with our lot in political life, because those up there that were voting, they own all the houses and we don't. So it kind of makes you want to vote for something different. So yeah, maybe we're getting smarter. Anyway, I'm going to finish my waffling about houses, and
I think Aaron wants to talk about the
Yeah.
isolationism that happened as a result of his preaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he, as part of his preaching, he preaches, and I got this a little bit too when I was in religion, to keep themselves separate from the world. Right? We're separate from the world. We're special. We're a special group, and we need to stay away from the world and live righteous lives. And he kind of took it a step further, where it wasn't just about separating themselves, it was about demonizing the other groups too, right? And that, I think that demonization of the other groups, calling people names, he and Jerry Falwell were talking about the causes of 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, and they blamed it on the abortionists and the feminists, and that's just the demonization of other people. And when you can demonize people, you make them look like they're other people and they're not to be trusted. And so when they open their mouth to talk, oh no, I can't listen to you. You're an abortionist. You're a feminist. I can't listen to you. That's not what God wants me to do. And that doesn't have any place, in my view, in politics. Politics should be about, and our government should be about what we want our country to be, how we want to move forward together, solving problems. And when you're demonizing other groups of people, you're not going to be able to do that, because you're going to spend your time like we are now, where you're just fighting culture wars, and you're fighting against things that aren't really important in the scheme of things. You're not solving problems. You're not making people's lives better. You're not making people's lives better. I don't know why I can't say that word. Dr. Rich, you had something to add?
Yeah, I love the word use you structurate. They're fantastic. Yes, I was just thinking about the whole process of this sort of in-grouping, out-grouping that the religion in general goes for, and Pat Robertson was fantastic at that. What you were saying, those people are different to us. They have a different idea, a different belief. Therefore, they're bad. Therefore, they're not part of our group. Therefore, they can't get away with the things we can get away. And the most fascinating thing I've always found about in grouping is the way that someone in your group can. Let's imagine somebody took a load of state secrets and stuck them in a boardroom. You might allow them the benefit of the doubt once they've done that if they're part of your in group. Whereas if the opponents, say, did a similar thing and then cooperated and gave the stuff back, they would be some kind of demon. They'd be awful. They'd be terrible, because it's a lopsided thing. And I think it played on that very much. That's why his side never actually looked at him and went, but you're a jerk. You were just horrible. You do all the things we don't like about them. They didn't mind, because he was part of the group, because he made it that, but he thinks abortion's bad, so he's actually cool. Let's not worry about the other dodgy stuff he's up to. It's it's the way of that side of things. It's the way politics works at the moment. It's the way politics has been heading for a long time, ever since our old friend Ronald Reagan and people who came after him. Kelley, help me out here.
Yeah, a lot of what you said the first time, I totally agree with. I mean, he was not a dumb person. He was really, really smart. He ran for president. He didn't make it. He got soundly defeated in the early stages of the primaries, but he was not a dumb person. And his show, the 700 Club, had a viewership of over 650,000 people. And it doesn't seem like a lot when you look at the whole scope of the country, but it really is. And like the last election in my state was only decided by a difference of about 25,000 votes. So 650,000 can be very significant depending on where parts of those votes are at, right? Just 25,000 of those 650,000 would have given Michigan to Trump. So it is quite a large group of people voting. And it was not something that we should have ignored and still shouldn't ignore. This movement isn't dying with Pat Robertson. It's not. So we still have to fight back at it. Yeah, I think that's a big thing that we have to remember, is that just because Pat Robertson is dead, this movement that he started, that he began, is still very much alive, and we still need to be fighting back at it. Aaron, I know you had something else you wanted to add, so go ahead.
Yeah, Pat Robertson worked hard, and we have to work harder. We have to get to the voting booth. We can't be apathetic. We have to be active. We have to encourage people to care, because there's a group of people that cares a lot of turning this country into a Christian theocracy. And so we have to care more than them and show up and encourage people to show up. I think to kind of switch gears a little bit, one of the problems I think that Pat Robertson did is he created a single issue voter. And I've known people like this where they would only vote based on somebody's stance on one thing, and that was usually abortion. They would always vote for the pro-life candidate no matter what. And I'm going to say that when you only vote on one issue, the people you vote for don't suffer any consequences for their views, for how they vote on certain issues, on who they are as people, on their character, on if they care or not. And so we need to not be single issue voters. We need to focus on all the issues and picking candidates that are honest, not just ones that have a single issue that we agree with. Cindy, you got something to say?
Yeah, I keep thinking about what you guys said about him being smart, and still he's been using the very simplest trick in in groups. It's if you want to fire up people, the the easiest way and the simplest way is to give them a common enemy.
Mhm.
And everything you said about in group and out group, uh, that's the purpose of this. It's fire up my base so that I can do whatever I want with them. And we see a lot of politicians do that today, not just in the US, but targeting one group is extremely um, useful and practical to fire up someone, because hate fires up people, whereas compassion and empathy, they tend to create less strong emotional responses. Dr. Rich, you wanted to say something? You're muted.
Yep,
Yeah, it's
you're
a very
muted.
simple thing that's been used very,
There we go.
very well. Sorry about that. I just got the small electric shock, as you do. It's just this a way of saying point at them, point at them. They're the problem. And it's used by politicians forever. It's used by all sides forever, and it's used whenever they've got no policies. You know, and it's the interesting thing about a lot of the Christian fundamentalism I see in the US is I don't think it's a partisan thing. I think if you're somebody on the right who's very strong over the Constitution, defend the Constitution. If you're someone on the left who doesn't like what's happening in social justice, fight the social justice. Robertson is a figure that should unite everybody in disgust, something I know quite a lot about. Really, rather than and it's again, like I say, he is using a very simple trick. He's a very smart man who knows that if you find a group to point at and say it's them, whenever you've got a problem, then that's what will happen. People will look at them and go, it's their fault. And it does work. It really works. And it works all the time. It works everywhere. And it has worked forever. And sadly, I think it will work forever. So those of us who are like not drawn into that, well, we need to fight back. We need to vote so that we can stop that. We can stop this sort of othering, which happens all too often, and that Pat Robertson is an example of, and the people who've come after him are continuing to do. Yeah, Kelley.
Yeah, I was just going to type something else down. One of the things I did want to say, expound off of what Cindy said about getting people motivated by hate. He didn't just use hate; he used fear too, which can really be a big motivator. I mean, he had a lot of people convinced that liberals were going to start building re-education camps and start rounding up Christians and stuff. And he really used that fear to, again, get those 650,000 people out to the polls. And he worked not just on a let's get this done tomorrow level, but he had a really slow strategy. It was little chip here, a little chip there, a little chip here, until all the chips added up to one big thing. And that one big thing became kind of normal because it wasn't just rushed overnight. It just happened little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. And 50 years later, he got Roe v. Wade taken, reversed. So it seemed to work for him. I don't think that that's the tactics we should take in trying to take back the things that I feel we have lost in our society because of him pushing these ideals. But it was a pretty good strategy. I don't think it's necessary to do that. I think we could do it a lot faster to reverse everything. So, Aaron, did you have something you want to wrap it up with?
Well, I just find it really interesting that that people would vote for other people that are obviously not Christian. It just goes to show that they're voting for the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
Right. This is supposedly the group that cares about family values and morality, and yet they constantly vote in people that are immoral, that don't have family values, just because they, again, happen to agree with them on one or two issues that they want to shove through. Cindy?
Yeah, responding to what you just said and what Dr. Rich said, Amit, earlier, saying that it will always work. I don't know if you saw it, but last weekend, the future Republican nominee, he explicitly said something like, "Hey, if you talk about taxing to people, yeah, they will be like this. But if you talk to them about social issues, they will be cheering up, like those trans things. 5 years ago, nobody talked about trans people. Nobody knew anything about them, and now look at us." And so he indirectly said to his people that he was uh, cheating on them. Basically, he was lying to them, he was misleading them, and they cheered him for that. And that was just astonishing. Both the fact that he admitted to that on camera in front of thousands of people, and the fact that he was admitting his tactics to the people who fall for it, and those same people just cheered him up. That was astonishing.
Yeah. Yeah, it always works. It always works. And it's happening here. Our government are going, yes, I know after Brexit, everything's terrible, but people are crossing the channel on small boats and they're not English. British, I mean, honest. Look at them. Look at them. and what I was saying now is the whole, what I was saying earlier about how you let people get away with things if they're part of the in-group in some way. That he's about as Christian as a Islamic Hitler, who's married to Satan. It doesn't matter to them. They're sort of, well, yeah, but he agrees with our things there. He's part of the group. We'll let that go. But you, on the other side, you're not perfect, even if they're actually really, really religious. Some fundamentalist leftist Christian, they will dislike more than this parody of a Christian, Pat Robertson.
Yeah. The former president, I remember once he said that he could shoot somebody in the middle of New York City and people would still vote for him. And it's true. I think he demonstrated to his party that they can do whatever they want and they're still going to get reelected. And that's really unfortunate. Kelley?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's all because they actually can justify the ends by the means, and I don't understand it. I've never thought that was correct, but I really had a good conversation here, and I want to thank everybody for watching and listening to it. And if you want to hear more nonprofits, you can click here.